Hi, it's Sarah and this is my March wrap-up. It's so good to be sat down and filming a video like this again. I've missed these videos. If you don't know, if you're new to my channel, or if you've missed any of my videos, for the month of March, I was taking part in a readathon called Realmathon, hosted by Covers with Cassidy. I will link her channel down below in the description box. And I decided to vlog for the month, to vlog my experience. Last week was meant to be like my last week of Realmathon, my last vlog, week 4 vlog of Realmathon. I don't know how people vlog weekly, daily. I don't know how they do it because I was struggling. I enjoyed it for the most part, but on the days that I didn't want to pick it up and start filming my face and chatting away, I felt like I had to do it either way. And in the last week of Realmathon, I didn't feel like I wanted to film at all. So I filmed a little bit and then there was just nothing left to that vlog. So I gave up on the project. And that's fine because I'm new to this and I'm learning and it's been a learning curve for me. I definitely enjoyed vlogging and I definitely want to do it again. But I think I want to do it at my pace with projects that I want to do personally rather than forcing like a monthly video or forcing like a weekly video because of a challenge. As you may know already if you've seen any of my other videos, I have said I'm not great with challenges anyway, and readathons, things like that, I don't participate in that much because I change my mind daily and I don't want to put too much pressure on myself to complete things if I don't want to do it. So I joined in on the readathon and it was a great time. I would consider doing it again and I would consider doing other readathons again. I just contributed the books that I could get contributed and I felt no pressure to hit like loads of books or loads of prompts. I just read what I wanted to read and then ticked off any prompts that it matched and I got some points even if it was just for the pages that I read. So the readathon itself wasn't the problem, it was me. It was a me problem, and the vlogging, the weekly vlogging, the pressure of vlogging was not for me. So in future, if I do put out any vlogs, it's going to be projects that I've worked on in my own time when I've felt like picking up my camera. Now that ramble's over with, we're going to get into what this video is meant to be about. So as I said, I participated in Realmathon, so you might have heard me speak about a lot of these books already, but if you weren't interested in watching my vlogs, or you didn't get around to watching them, or you are new here, this is for you guys to see what I read in the month of March. And obviously there will be some books on here that I didn't include in any vlogs because I stopped vlogging. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start with the stats. I've been tweaking my stats a bit and hopefully eventually they will look consistent, but I know I've been doing them a little bit different every month so far. But we're testing things. I know one of my wrap-ups, or maybe both of my wrap-ups, I've included books that have been turned into TV shows and movie adaptations. I am still intrigued by this, but I'm gonna do that in my own time because we're currently now in April and I have not watched any of the TV show or movie adaptations of the books that I've read this year, and it's something that I want to do. But again, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, so I'm not going to include them in the stats as something to record. That's something I'm going to look into in my own time. I don't want to put pressure onto a little challenge that I've given myself for fun by mentioning it every month. When I get time to sit down and watch something new, when I want to do that, that's when I will have a look into this and watch a TV show or movie adaptation of something that I've read this year. I've also changed the way I've rated books in these stats. I've started rating books with like 0.5s because I've just felt like I've gravitated towards that more in March, and sometimes like I'm not confident on giving something a 4 or a 5 star, so it'll get a 4.5. It's just personal preference. That's what I've been gravitating towards in the month of March. In the month of March, I read 11 books. I had 2 DNFs. My DNFs won't be included in the rest of the stats. And also, I'm going to mention the 2 DNFs at the end of the video. So if you're interested in sticking around and seeing why I DNF'd these books, then you can stick around for those. I leave them to the end of the video just because I don't feel like there's any real time that I do decide to DNF a book, and the way I order the books that I read is how I read them throughout the month, so the first book that I started with to the last book that I read. Sometimes when I decide to DNF a book, it's like something I've been thinking about doing for a couple of weeks and then I just decide not to pick it up. It never gets like an accurate date of when I DNF'd it, so I'm going to leave that till the end of the video. I think it makes more sense as well because some people don't care about DNFs and don't want to hear about them. Read 11, DNF 2, I had 1 reread. 7 of the books that I read were full-length books. 3 of the books that I read were manga. 1 of the books I read was a comic book. 8 of the books that I read were off my physical TBR. I'm really proud with that stat. I think I did really well in January with that one, and I've done really well in March as well. But I think in February, I didn't really get many books off my physical TBR. So I'm glad to have some more physical books read off my TBR. I read 3 fantasy books, I read 2 thrillers, I read 2 dystopians, I read 1 horror and 1 dark academia, I read 1 romance and 1 non-fiction, and out of those I read 1 young adult. Over the month of March, I read 3,776 pages. I had 2 5-stars, thank God. If you've watched my other wrap-ups, you will see that I hadn't had a 5-star until March, until this month. So thank God we have 2. 3 of the books I rated 4.5 stars. 1 of the books I rated a 4-star. 4 of the books I rated a 3.5 star. And 1 of the books I rated a 2.5 star. My average rating for the month came out at 3.98, which it was so close to a 4-star average rating, but I am happy with a 3.98. I've had kind of a mediocre reading year up until March, and I think if I had not read 1 or 2 of those worse books in March, then I would have had a really good rating. So it almost ended up being a really good month, but I'm still counting it as a win. I had a great time reading. I read some new favourites, and I can't complain really. And thinking about it, I think this happened because I was gravitated towards reading more of the books that I usually read, which I didn't do as much in February. The first book that I read in the month of March was Malice by John Gwynne. This kicked March off perfectly. I had a great time reading this book. So Malice is an adult fantasy. I don't know if it's classed as epic, high, one of the fantasy genres. I'm unsure on which is which, to be quite honest with you. I need to have a little look into it. It is a big fantasy book, and it's the first in Fearful and the Fallen series, I want to say. If I've got that right, I'm gobsmacked. I don't know if it's... Oh, there we go. Fearful and the Fallen. So yeah, this is the first in the Fearful and the Fallen series, and I've heard mixed things about this one. I know a lot of people love it, but there's also a lot of people that say it's really slow and you have to get past a certain point to appreciate it. Now, I'm not usually one who will carry on if I'm not enjoying a book, but I enjoyed this from the start. It was slow, I will admit, but I think what I can give you from this is if you're not enjoying following the characters and you're not enjoying the world building, then you're probably not going to care by the end of it. I enjoyed both those things. I loved following the characters. I don't think there was one POV that I didn't enjoy, but there was definitely one that I enjoyed more than any of the others, and that was Corbin's POV. I loved him as a character, and I was really invested in following him and his story. So this worked out really well for me, and by the end of it, I was so pleased and so satisfied with it all that I can see the rest of the series being like really epic because of how this one went. Yes, it's a slow build setup, but I can imagine it really kicks off in the next books. Don't quote me because I haven't tried any of them yet, but I'm eager to get back to the rest of the series. I had a great time with this. I would definitely recommend trying it, but I think if you're like 200-300 pages in and you're not enjoying it, I wouldn't say to carry on unless you're really invested and think you could pull through. But I do think you have to be invested in the characters and the world to be okay with having no plot. But yeah, I was very satisfied with the ending. I'm definitely expecting more from the rest of the books, and I'm excited to pick up the second book in the series. This got a 4.5 star rating from me. The next book I read in the month of March was Alice in Borderland, Volume 6 by Haro Aso. This is a dystopian series. Obviously, I'm on Volume 6 now, so I've been reading this from the beginning, and this is probably my favourite manga that I've read so far. I've not read many, but this series is definitely my favourite. And this has a TV show adaptation, so if you're interested in seeing what it's about, but before picking up the mangas, I would recommend it because the TV show adaptation did an amazing job and I was hooked. I binged season 2 so quickly, and I'm not a type of person who like binges series that often. I love the characters in this world. The story we're following is basically a bunch of people who lived in Tokyo. They kind of appeared in this world, and it's, like I say, it's a dystopian world. Everyone gets a visa, and they have to play games to add time onto their visas and to essentially survive there. So if they lose at a game, or if they don't play a game by the time their visas run out, they will be executed. They will die. It is quite dark, but it's really clever. I think I've spoken about the series quite a lot already on my channel, and if you're looking at getting into manga and you're okay with darker stories, it's not the darkest that I've read, and it's not, I wouldn't say it was really dark, but there's definitely some things that I would say look out for if you have any triggers, just so you know going into it. This volume in particular got a 5-star rating. It was just one of the games that happened in this book that was my favourite to follow, and we got a lot of character development in this volume especially. So this was 5 out of 5 star, and I would definitely recommend it if you're intrigued in the slightest. The next book that I read in the month of March was My Darkest Prayer by S.A. Cosby. This is a debut thriller book by S.A. Cosby. I've been wanting to try this author's work for a little while now. I've always been intrigued in Razorblade Tears. I still haven't read that one yet. I saw this one in a charity shop a while ago and picked it up. I saw my chance to give him a go, and if you've watched my vlog, you already know I had some issues with this. I think his writing is addictive. It's easy to follow. I think he's a good writer. He's a solid writer. It's a shame about the problems I had in this book. The plot itself was fine. It was satisfactory. I finished the book feeling content. It wasn't amazing, but it could have had a higher rating, and it could have got me even more excited to try his other books if it wasn't for certain things in this book. The problems I had with this one was we follow a main character who has slept with literally, this might be a spoiler. I'll put a little spoiler warning up here for what I'm going to talk about. It's really minor, but people might not want to know, so I'll put a little spoiler warning up. We follow our main character who has practically slept with every single person, every single woman that he's laid eyes on in this book. And if he hasn't slept with them, there's a sexual attraction there, and there's something there. Like, he can't lay eyes on one woman without there being nothing. It's just another character. We don't have to have a sexual interaction with every single woman, okay? So, on top of that, the women are described in detail compared to the men. The thick thighs, the beautiful curves, all that nonsense. So, it was a lot for such a small book, and for it to appear every time there was a female character introduced. It was kind of forgettable. I rated it as 3.5 star because I don't think it was, I think it was better than a lot of debuts that I read, and I think it was better than a lot of books that I've read that I've given 3 star. I left feeling like I still wanted to read more from this author. I just wasn't as excited as I was before I started this book because there was some negatives. So it gets the 0.5 for keeping some intrigue, for the plot being pretty solid for a first book. I read the introduction of this book before going into it. I love any author's notes, author's details into why they wrote the book, and the introduction in this book kind of give their inspiration, give the reason why they decided to become a writer and how they became a writer. And I loved it, and that made me feel more connected to his first story as well. I was really happy to have his first story in my hands and to give it a read. The next book I read was Mile High by Liz Tomford. Another romance snuck its way into March, but I'm glad I picked this one up. I give this one a 4 star. I had a really fun time with it. I loved the main characters. I love following the main characters. It was my first sports romance, so maybe that's something I am now interested in. I'm unsure. I've read one, but I do want to give it a go. What was interesting is when I was reading this book, there was a tiny bit of detail about him actually being at a hockey game, and I don't feel like there was much of that. There wasn't enough of that throughout the book. When I got a bit more of him playing hockey, I was really interested, which took me by surprise. When it actually came to that, I was like, I want more of this. I want to see people playing sports, I guess. I'm not a sports person. I'm so confused to why I felt so drawn towards that scene. I think the writing was really good. It was entertaining. It was fun. It was exactly what I wanted from a romance. It's one of the best romances that I've read personally. It is a longer romance, but it was really easy and entertaining to follow. I think if you were reading this just physically, you might think differently. I had the audiobook, and a lot of the time I would put my physical edition down, my ebook edition down, and just listen to the audiobook whilst I was doing things around the house. That worked perfectly for me. The audiobook was fantastic. fantastic. The characters were great. I loved their connection. I loved the mental health rep, and there was diversity in this book, and it was solid. It was a solid first book. I'm definitely intrigued in reading the second book because this is a part of the Windy City series. The only problem is it's one of those series where you've had like side characters in the first book that now we're going to follow in the second book. And I don't know if I'm intrigued enough in those characters, but maybe once I pick up that second book and they're fleshed out a bit more, I will be more interested in them and their relationship. There's no complaints. I don't know why I didn't give it a 5-star. Oh, there was one complaint. I lie. There was one thing that I didn't like in the book, and it was near the start. The main male character, he kept mentioning about like the chase and like chasing the girl, like that romantic chase kind of thing. But at the time, he didn't even know if she liked him as a person. She was coming off as if she didn't even like him, not even romantically interested, just didn't like him as a person. So I found that was like a bit too far. I was like, just back off, man. But it didn't happen too much, and it wasn't pushed too hard that I was affected by it, and it was fine. Once that was out the way, everything was fine. The next book I read in the month of March was The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is a reread. You've probably heard me speak about this so many times if you've been on my channel for a little while now. This was my favourite book of 2023. It's a dark academia story that follows a bunch of prestigious students who are taking a Greek class, and it's a very small class. There's like 6 students in this class, I think, and they're being taught by a professor, and there is a murder and there is conflict, and from there we follow these characters, and each one of these characters have their issues, have their problems, and I love following them. I always say I'm obsessed with following these characters. Like, it's an obsessive feeling of I just want to be with them constantly. Like, when I put this book down, I always just want to be back with them. I'm totally like drawn into their world and these people, and obviously it's a dark book, but Donna Tartt's writing is exquisite. It's just beautiful. Also, the audiobook for this one, I had a different experience reading this the second time round because I listened to the majority of it through audiobook, whereas the first time I believe I just read it physically. I enjoyed both experiences, and I'm glad I had that like new experience on the reread. Donna Tartt actually does the audio narration of the book, and I feel like she just knows the atmosphere and the feeling of this book so well that she can narrate it perfectly. If you've ever been interested in this book, if you like dark academia, like what are you doing? Pick up this book immediately. This is one I will rant and rave about over and over again. I am obsessed. So of course I got a 5-star. I don't know if I said it got a 5-star, but it got a 5-star. The next book I finished was Alice in Borderland, Volume 7. This volume got a 3.5 star rating. This is the lowest I've rated an Alice in Borderland volume yet. This just took me out of it a bit because we weren't following our main characters anymore. And in the series, it's the same. Like, the TV show adaptation does the same thing. But I feel like when you're watching it, it doesn't feel as disjointed. Whereas I feel like having like this book in the middle, like 7 volumes in, just plonked in there where we're totally taken away from the characters, feels a lot different. I enjoyed this more in the TV show adaptation, and I just thought this was quite a slow volume, and I didn't care as much about the people we were following in this volume. Next up, I read Bleach, Volume 13. It's a young adult manga series. We are mainly following Ichigo and then the characters around him and the battles that he gets in. This volume in particular, I gave a 4.5 star rating. I was so shocked and surprised when I picked up the first volume, and I really loved it. I'm 13 volumes in now, and whenever I take a little break from this series, I'm like, what if I don't like it? What if I was just lying to myself? And then I pick up another volume and I'm drawn back into the world, and it's amazing. This volume in particular was action heavy, which is one thing that it's one of the reasons I was worried about starting the series, because I didn't just want all action. Yet it still got a 4.5 star rating for me because it was done perfectly. You follow the action, but you're learning things as you're following these fights. We get character development and we get new information, and it was just done really well. And then at the end, it like kind of slowed down a little, and it was just perfect. I think the speed of it and everything was just perfect. It didn't get a 5 star It just didn't feel like 5-star. I've had 5-star reads in this series and they feel like full 5 stars. The next one I picked up in the month of March was the first volume of the Locke Key series. I can't remember what this volume's actually called. I reread this one because I was getting myself involved in Realmathon. This was one of Cassidy's favourites, which got you extra points if you read a Cassidy favourite. And it was over the weekend where they did a Peace Talks weekend, which was you got extra points for every book completed in that weekend. So of course this was a quick read. It was a Cassidy favourite. I was going for the points with this one, but it was also one that I have read previously and I've never finished the series. So I wanted to retry the first volume and I ended up giving it a 4.5 star rating. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. This series is by Joe Hill, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's a horror comic series and it's kind of supernatural and fun and creepy, yeah. And I'm really intrigued in like what will end, like how this will all conclude. And I'm only on volume 1. So I am intrigued to see, like, get answers to some of the questions I have. And I also would like to try the TV show adaptation. So yeah, I need to follow on with the rest of that series. I think like all books apart from one are available on Kindle Unlimited, which is annoying. But at least I can read them all and then like read them all apart from that one. And then if I like all of those ones, I'll confidently buy the series and it won't be an issue. The next book I finished was Unbelievable. I don't know who this was written by, so apologies, but there will be a picture up on the screen of the cover. I listened to this solely through audiobook. I never had a physical edition. I found this because I was fancying a non-fiction book because I was having a big 2-day like DIY cleaning day in the house because we had our annual landlord inspection, so we were just making sure the house was up to scratch for when they came to inspect the house. So over that weekend I thought I need an audiobook, I fancy a non-fiction, and I just need something I can throw on and just follow quite easily. I find non-fictions, memoirs, things like that really easy to follow just via audiobook. I found Unbelievable and I thought, I know it's been adapted into I think a Netflix documentary series, I don't know. I've seen it and been intrigued by it, so I was like, okay, I'll try the book, this is my time. This book got a low rating from me. That's not on the story. That I don't rate non-fictions for the story because of course this is people's lives, their accounts of things, and I'm not going to judge that in itself. The reason this book in itself gets a low rating from me is because I think it was written poorly. The rating isn't on like the victims' experiences themselves, it's more about how the book was written and how it came across. I don't think it was done well. Next up, I read All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. This is the second book that I've read by this author, and it's another one that I found in a charity shop, and it's signed by the author, so I had to snatch it up. This again got a 3.5 star rating for different reasons this time. Again, I think his writing is exceptional. I love his writing. I feel like it's really easy to read, but I also think he writes some hard-hitting lines. But this time he wasn't over-explaining the women's curves and he wasn't looking at every woman as a sexual object. So he's improved for sure, and I can appreciate that. This time it felt dry. The story felt dry for me, and again it gets a 3.5 star rating because the writing was exceptional. The plot was like just fine, but for personal preference, yes, the plot was fine, but it wasn't for me. And I went into this book initially thinking it was going to be for me because it seemed like it was going to follow a school shooting incident, which it kind of did, but it really didn't. So it started out that way, and then we followed why the school shooting incident happened, and I couldn't have cared less, to be honest with you. I couldn't recommend this to you, but at the same time, it's better than My Darkest Prayer in the fact that I don't feel like there was any actual issues in this story. The story just wasn't for me, so if you're interested in trying S.A. Cosby and you do feel like this story intrigues you, pick it up by all means. And then the last book that I completed in the month of March was The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. I'm so happy about this. I'm so happy that this is on this list. Me and my sister-in-law are buddy reading the Wheel of Time series, and we started this a long while ago, but then we never got any further in, and then all of a sudden we just boshed it out in March, and it was a really fun reading experience. This is a fantasy series and it's really popular and beloved. It also has a lot of critiques from it too. There's even the people that love this series critique these books a lot, and I see why. The first 2 books I gave a 4-star rating. This book got a 3.5-star rating, and I was left feeling a little disappointed when I finished this book. I feel like the first 3 books honestly could have all been one big book, even smaller if you took out a bunch of stuff, but I didn't mind the first 2 books being like a slow build fantasy setup. Like I didn't mind that. I don't mind a slow build whatsoever. This felt really slow. It was easy to get through. The readability it's there. I can get through these books really easily. The fun, entertaining reads. But I just felt like this book was slow because we weren't following all the characters that we were in the first 2 books, and we got less of some characters that I thought I would be happy with, but I clearly wasn't, because I felt like this moved along slower because of that. And the ending was like satisfactory. I'm glad for how it like ended, but at the same time it was expected from me personally, and I don't know, we had some good moments in this book, we really did, but I just felt I was just left feeling a little bit disappointed and a little bit worried. This didn't live up to the first 2 books, and like I said, I'm happy with slow, but I'm hoping things start making sense and things start coming together. I think we need a little bit of something. And I think one of the issues people have with the series as well is Robert Jordan's writing, which I can definitely agree with. I think he is amazing at certain things that he does. He's amazing at world building. He's amazing at setting up the atmosphere. And I think he's written some really great characters. That being said, I think actual like character dynamics and relationships, he does so poorly. The same thing goes with Robert Jordan with the girl descriptions, but I also find that like all the girls are attracted to a lot of the guys they see, but also a lot of the guys are interested in a lot of the girls they see. My head just keeps spinning. I don't know who's interested in who anymore. They've all got a list of people they're interested in, and I don't know who's going to end up with who or what's happening. That part of the story I have no interest in, and I hope it drops, but I'm guessing it doesn't because people talk about it a lot. So the relationships and the character dynamics are the weak parts in this story and in the series so far. But there is a lot of good in the series that I really enjoy, and like I enjoy following and being on this journey. I just hope I don't get sick. I just hope I don't get sick so far into the series if the books continue like this. I am expecting there to be ups and downs, but also like if you get so many bad books, you get to a point where you just want to give up and you're not invested anymore, and that's what I'm hoping doesn't happen in the series, because I am having a really good reading experience with them so far. So the last 2 books that I want to mention are my DNFs. The first one I'm pretty sure I DNF'd in March. It feels like it was so long ago that I'm unsure now, but I'm pretty sure it was like the start of March. I have no interest in picking this book up anymore. And it was Personal by Lee Child. If you've seen any other of my wrap-ups or whatever, or wherever I've mentioned it, I have mentioned the Lee Child Jack Reacher series, and I am so many books in, like I don't know what number Personal is. I want to say around about 18. This series is following the same structure every single book. So we start out with Reacher going somewhere, he ends up finding some trouble, he gets involved, he helps out, he leaves, and he goes somewhere else. There is like, I feel like there's absolutely no character development in this series, and I'm not getting as many books that I'm enjoying in this series anymore. I enjoyed a bunch of the early ones, and then I think it's been so long since I've had a really good Reacher book. And I feel like now I'm just, if I pick one up and I'm a little bit in and I have no interest, I'm just giving up with it. So I gave up with Personal. I'm struggling with the series at the minute because I'm thinking that I still want to try a couple more, because I own 7 more of the books in the series that I have not yet picked up. This is a big series, and for no character development and following the same thing over and over again, it gets really tiresome, and I'm a bit tired of it. It's not just like following the same structure, the writing also gets to be really repetitive. There was one book in particular that like he just used the quote like, oh, it's 50-50 chance of everything in life ever, and it was used throughout the book so much, and I couldn't help but just like continuously rolling my eyes. Lee Child seems to do that a lot in the TV show adaptation too. They say things like, you don't mess with the I don't know what the group is called now, but like they would repeat that, or, you know, you don't mess with them. There was one quote where Richa would say something to another main character, Neegly. I'm just forgetting all details. He would say something to one of the other main characters, and he'd say, "Do I ever tell you how smart you are?" or something like that. And she'll go, "Not nearly enough." And it's like, haha, yeah, funny. And then he said it like 6 more times throughout the series, and it's like, oh, just like, get over it already. It's just things like that. Like, it cringes me out, and it really puts me off the books, the TV series. Now, I really enjoyed the first season, but I just got sick of the second season. We didn't even finish it, I don't think. Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard because I was hoping for more, and I had some really great times with certain books in the earlier series. So like, I keep hoping for that to happen again, but I'm like, do I just not care anymore? I think I don't care anymore. We'll come to a conclusion with that series at some point, but for now, that's how I'm feeling. The next DNF was Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. God, this was cringy. Like, I think the DNFs here were just cringy. I can't even remember what we were following in this story. I wanted to DNF at 30 pages. I didn't. I carried on. It got a little bit better. And then it started mentioning Twilight, you know, the famous book TV series, film saga thing, the films and book series, whatever. I can't speak. Okay, it kept mentioning Twilight, and initially I was like, "Oh, for it. I'm a Twilight girly. I'm here for it, right?" I know what rereading Twilight is like as an adult, because that's the main character was doing that. She loves Twilight. Great. And then she just kept mentioning Twilight. Like, it just kept going, and it really felt like I was in like a Twilight fanfic, like Twilight fever dream situation. It was really bizarre. I can't tell you anything else that happened in that story because that took over my brain. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that book at all. I'm happy I DNF'd that one, and I'm happy to leave my thoughts out into the world for that book because I wish someone had stopped me from picking up that book. We got there. I'm really hoping this is still recording. I have a fear that this has just stopped because that's what happens to me. You know, I've had a lot of technical issues here on BookTube, so hopefully we've had none today. I'm back filming usual content and I'm excited for it. So hopefully we will be back to our regularly scheduled times, weekly videos every Friday. If you have stuck around with me for this long and you haven't already, please subscribe, and if you like this video, give it a like down below and leave me a comment down below and let me know how your reading went in March. Did you have any 5 stars? Did you have any really bad books that you just couldn't read any longer and had to DNF? Just let me know. I love hearing about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next Friday with another video. Bye. Hi, it's Sarah, and this is my April wrap-up. No, it's not.